Welcome back to the Legal Lead Shark podcast, where high growth law firms and the marketers who power them come to sharpen their edge. If you're obsessed with leads, conversions, and building law firms that dominate your market, you're in the right place. We go deep with the top minds in legal marketing, from agency owners to intake pros and PPC legends, to uncover the mindset, strategies, and tools that it takes to turn more clicks into signed cases. I'm your host, Terrazas, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Steve Fretzin, the host of Be That Lawyer podcast, best-selling author, and one of the most respected business development coaches for attorneys in the nation. Steve spent over 17 years helping lawyers build practices they actually love without feeling like they have to sell. His approach is about showing up as a trusted advisor that clients want to hire. And trust me, you're going to want to take notes on this one. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Kaylee. So happy to be here.
I'm excited. Roles reversed. So I've been on Be That
Yes.
Lawyer podcast. You guys will have to hop over and catch his episode, subscribe to his podcast. He has a lot of great episodes that you're going to want to hear. But Steve, if you will, just kind of quickly introduce yourself, where you're from, how you got into the industry, and then we'll dive in from there.
I live just north of Chicago in what's called the North Shore, right on Lake Michigan, in a town called Highwood. I actually live in a old military base. I'm living in an 1890s horse stable that was converted over in the early 2000s, and so I still smell the faint smell of horse ghost, if you will. But it's wonderful, and I'm not a lawyer. Just put that out there. I never thought in a million years I'd work with lawyers. I had a lawyer father who would put me on the cross as a teenager on a regular basis and scared me away from the law because I couldn't win an argument with the guy. But long and the short is, I ended up starting a business in 2004, really focused on what I call sales-free selling, teaching entrepreneurs how to sell with integrity and feeling really good about it, solving problems. And the recession of 2008 and 9 hit hard in the legal industry, and I got pulled into it. Not kicking and screaming, but enough to realize that this was an industry that was in desperate need of coaching around how to do planning and process around business development. And it really landed well between the sales-free approach, the need in the industry. It was like peanut butter and chocolate making Reese's. And it's been a love affair ever since. So I'm working with attorneys all over the country, all over the world, and helping them to grow big books of business and be a rainmaker, be that lawyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got my copy of Be That Lawyer book. You can see it behind Steve there on its way to me now. So yeah, it's Steve's got a lot of industry knowledge. We're going to dive really deep. I am a huge advocate of coaching. I have business coaches and mentors myself. And on your podcast, we talked a little bit about, like, we could see the blind spots we have. They wouldn't be blind spots. So that's why we all need someone kind of watching our back and taking the 30,000 foot view of our businesses to help us see where we can grow. So, well, awesome. I want to just dive right in with the first question. And it's going to be a juicy one, because I think a lot of people underestimate what coaching ROI looks like. But you've coached hundreds of attorneys. So what is the biggest mindset shift that lawyers need to make to grow their firms sustainably?
I mean, the negative connotation of sales and selling is, out in front. And I've yet to meet an attorney who said, I can't wait to get in to be a lawyer so I can go sell legal services. I mean, that's just not ever been said ever in the history of lawyers, at least that I've ever picked up on. But ultimately, the mind shift that needs to occur is that we're not actually selling legal services. What we would rather see it as is solving problems or walking a buyer through a buying decision to find the best fit or a win-win outcome. That's what I'm trying to shift lawyers into thinking, having your own book of business and your own clients is the promised land for private practice attorneys. And you're never going to get there if your mindset is, I hate sales, I hate selling, I hate being sold to. I'm just going to avoid it and just be a service attorney for the rest of my career. And I think that worked in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And today, it's not really a great way to be in control of one's career. So I think that mind shift can make a big difference in how somebody embraces business development and marketing and personal branding as a way to help more people and solve more problems, because you're going to have that opportunity versus being a best kept secret.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there was also a big uptick around like the late 80s, early 90s of people that went into law school. So the competition started getting fierce. Like you said before, you could just kind of show up on a TV commercial here and there and you were the guy, or the girl. Yeah. But now it's competitive. People have to fight for the business in a sense. And part of that is good marketing with a brand behind it, because you're building trust. And then to your point, the other part of it is it's not selling them, it's showing them the value that you're offering and why you're, I think Mike Morris said it best, the Cherry Garcia in a vanilla world, like, what do you offer me that the other 10 attorneys that I could go to don't? And that's what you help coach them around, is that value factor and how to articulate articulate that, right?
Not only did you nail that, but also that is my favorite brand of ice cream is the Cherry Garcia. Like if I have to pick with all the Ben and Jerry's, like that's the one that's my go-to. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's become competitive. There's an AI, world happening now that's going to change things pretty dramatically. The political environment, economic environment, everything is changing and uncertain. But the one thing lawyers can be certain about is if they have enough of their own clients, they have value to move laterally to another firm. They could do it themselves if they want to hang a shingle. They have all types of options and alternatives that lawyers who just keep their heads down and bill hours might be the best attorney in a particular practice area or in a particular industry. But that doesn't necessarily equate to longevity in, years 2025 to 2030. Things are going to be changed up quite a bit.
There has been an astronomical shift. And I think we're at that point. One of my favorite, and I have his quote on my website, Daniel Priestley, everything in business is downstream from lead generation. If you can't generate leads, you don't have a business. But one of the things he said about AI, because honestly, it's a big question mark. It's kind of like when electricity or the cars replace horse and buggies, people are like, what do you think is going to happen in 5 years? I have no idea. Like, we didn't even know what electricity was, And that's kind of where AI is. We've jumped on the AI boat with our intake, and we have really revolutionized for our clients their ability to clean up intake. Because a lot of that, going back to saying sales and non-sales, marketing, non-marketing, but intake is a sales process. And it's not salesy, but the person answering the phone has to have a certain tone, demeanor, professionalism. They can't sound like they want to jump out the window every time they get a call, So there's so many aspects of business that are shifting. I call it the Blockbuster versus Netflix. We're in that time right now. That shift has happened, and there's a lot of law firms still doing Blockbuster style marketing, for lack of a better term. But to your point, even zoom out from marketing, they're running their business that way, the way it was done maybe by their dad in the 80s, and it's not working anymore.
Maybe the big difference is when you have electricity, you can start to see what around you could be done better if it had electricity, right? Lights in homes and streets and things like that. With AI, it's just intelligence, creating more intelligence, more intelligence, more intelligence to solve problems and create solutions, and that's sort of a little uncertain, but also we can tell it's going to advance much faster than, horses to tractors or fire to electricity or coal to electricity. So I'm just saying, like, it's something people, if about and they're frustrated and it's like enough already with the AI, but there's no question that it's going to impact legal and pretty dramatically. And so it keeps coming back to, the bones of like, you're either a student of the game and you're playing ball and you're doing the things and keeping up with everything, or you're kind of get left behind. And that's unfortunate, for people that aren't thinking ahead.
Yeah. And do you help coach? This is just off script here, but do you help coach law firms on how to start integrating AI and ways that can help them scale? Because it's never going to
not really
replace.
We use the term law firm or lawyer. I'm really working with lawyers, not law firms. Okay. There are many managing partners I work with that run law firms. So I guess I'm working with law firms, but I'm really helping them leverage AI to create content and to make improvements. And I'm demonstrating it every day. And I'll give you a quick example. So I have a podcast. The podcast, like yours, creates content. There's audio, there's video, and yes, there's also the transcripts in written. So I'm creating for every podcast, yours included, Kaylee, is going to be truncated down through AI and an editor to a blogcast, which is just a blog, of our interview. All right. The book behind me, what's beautiful about is that it was generated through the interviews I conducted with top rainmakers from around the world and then condensed into blogcasts and then condensed into a book. And so what can you listen to, 50 hours of podcasts? Yeah, you could do that. Or do you want the highlight reel? And that's the book. So how are we generating content? How are we creating thought leadership through AI as a tool, like many other tools, to help us get ahead and stay consistent with our marketing, how we build our brand? And it's funny because since I introduced AI to my clients and have them do their infomercials it used to be just let me edit your infomercials. Now it's let's put it through ChatGPT together. Let's say what's your why. Let's say what your practice area is, what problems you solve, what you believe is your differentiator. It takes all of that and it creates a 30-second piece of perfection or something that's close to it that can be tweaked. And now they're all doing their infomercials and they sound amazing and they're not putting you to sleep. And everybody's like looking at eyes kind of pop pop and explode because they're interesting versus being totally boring. And I do this and I do this and I do this, all the boring infomercials that we hear from lawyers that make us just want to put our head under the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the Cherry Garcia factor is, and I'm in Oklahoma City. We still see, like my husband will watch the news. I make him watch in the office because I don't want to hear it, but he'll pause the commercials on lawyers just to show me how bad they are. It's yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's really going to up level. And again, the people leveraging it, like you're teaching them, they're the Netflix. They're the ones leveraging it to help them. And all the others are going to be the blockbusters that didn't hop on the boat and everyone just blew past them. So I'm 100% there with you with AI. It's going to be a helpful tool for those who know how to use it. And we're all still learning because it's developing so quickly.
Just like being a student of business development and networking time management, I'm saying, hey, watch some YouTube videos on AI. Watch some videos about how to be better at prompting. I'll give you another example. So I finished writing an article. I run it through ChatGPT to make improvements in grammatical improvements, anything. And usually I'm pretty good about that. But the last thing I'll say to ChatGPT before I hit, enter is ask me any questions you have before producing this final article to ensure that we're on the same page. And it'll ask me 2 or 3 questions. I answer them. And then the article comes out even better than it would have because of that one extra prompt that was thrown in there at the end.
Yeah, I have so many GPTs set up to be GPT for this and that. I've got a business coach one that I set outside and like verbally talk to. Sometimes I forget my kids are like, Mom, you still have real friends in real life, right? Because she's so good. I'm like, what are my blind spots? What am I not seeing? What am I not looking at? Like, where am I missing? And it just completely mind blowing how you can talk to it for an hour and come out of it like with a new game plan for the next quarter because it really did just up level your thinking in areas you weren't thinking about. So that's a perfect segue to my next question, which is networking and referrals. Now, I deal with marketing. We do Google ads, LSA ads. We do basically Map Pack. We get you to the top of Google. We help you optimize your intake. But one area that I do see as a massive blind spot for most attorneys is when it comes to networking and referrals, whether that's networking to get business from friends, family, college mates, etc. Everybody knows what you do so that they know to call you, or referring other attorneys, building that network of other attorneys. So let's talk there a little bit on how you kind of coach them through developing that blind spot, which I know is a huge one for every attorney I've ever spoken with, honestly.
Well, again, if you are in a B2C space and advertising is going to get you all the leads you'll ever need and you're getting a great ROI on that, I'm never going to tell someone to stop. That's just go for it. That being said, I also like the idea of having multiple buckets because if the Google algorithm changes or LinkedIn goes away or something happens, you just don't know. You want to make sure that you've got, your eggs in a couple baskets. But networking and relationships, especially for B2B lawyers, I work with probably 70% B2B and about 30% B2C is, they're at a big firm. They're at a mid-market firm. Their brand is their firm and that's not their brand. And so we do have to do some marketing to help them build their brand and their thought leadership in their space. But while that's going on, let's also look at creating a business development plan to identify where the low-hanging fruit is, who you should be getting in front of. That could be prospective clients, strategic partners, and centers of influence. Those are the 3 targets that I'm generally pushing people towards. The question is, they're like, well, where are they? I'm like, okay, great question. We need to find that out. So if you're dealing with GCs at big companies, they're not going to be at the local chamber of commerce or the local bar association, right? So we need to figure out, like, maybe you need to be on boards. Maybe you need to join a private club, or maybe it's your church or your temple where people at all different levels of success and wealth and whatever are going to be hanging out. And so we need to think about your past and existing clients. Can we leverage them? People that you've networked with in the past? Or are you starting from nothing? And we just have to say, look, you need to join some groups and we need to think about where those groups meet, what those groups focus are, who's running them, who are your targets at those groups, how are you going to add value, and then make sure that they're set up with a plan to go in. And, it's like planning's part of it. And then what's the execution? And one of the most wonderful things that I help lawyers with is networking is kind of like a big black hole of like, what do I do? What do I show up at this event? What do I do? What do I say? What do I ask? I feel like totally alone, at risk, and, sort of challenged to like break through. But what if you were set up to know what your infomercial is? So when someone says, nice to meet you, Kaylee, what do? You know what to say that's going to draw them in to ask additional questions, or being prepared with what questions you should ask someone else to understand not only more about them, their personal life and their business. Are they people you should be continuing to talk with or not. And so there's all of these steps and acronyms and things that I'm giving lawyers to help them sort of move through networking to qualify people forward and through, or to move people out. And that doesn't mean you can't make a friend. Like, make friends, that's fine. But there are certain people that are going to be more poised to provide you with contacts in business, and other people that you can just be friends with or connect on LinkedIn. For example, let's say I work with lawyers, right? Clearly. But I meet someone who is a financial planner, second year in, Northwestern Mutual. I already have a dozen of top-notch financial planners that I network with. Don't really have the space for this. I can be a friend. I can be helpful. I can say, have you thought of this? Let me know if you have any questions. I can help you with networking. Make a friend, but that's not someone I'm going to spend an hour with one-on-one unless I see unbelievable potential in this person. Then maybe I will. So you just have to have a way of sort of meeting people and identifying who you want to move forward with and who you may just want to move out and connect on LinkedIn or just stay friends. Keeping in mind, if you're meeting 10 people at an event, I don't think you're going to stay friends with 10 people. This is sort of like speed dating. You have to sort of quickly figure out, where's the attraction and who's a nice person and who's a non-smoker or whatever it is that you're looking for. And it's like dating. And then you got to figure out, who do I want to go on a date with and who do I want to just maybe, swipe left or whatever people are doing now, that type of thing. So that's just, there's a lot to unpack with networking. I wrote a book called The Attorney's Networking Handbook. It's on Amazon. Great resource with just like breaking it down, how to plan, how to execute, how to deal with a conference, how to deal with, finding the right networking events, infomercials, anything and everything you'd want to know is probably covered in that book to some degree.
That's invaluable information. I am an avid book reader because of that. There's so many, networking is something my business coach had to teach me how to do, like you said, going in with your 30-second elevator pitch, but ending it with a question to get them engaged and get them pulled into the conversation. And then, like a good lawyer, even though you weren't taught in law school how to network, like a good lawyer, it's probing. You got to ask the right questions and quickly develop a barometer of like, how valuable can I be to this person and how valuable can this person be to me? And I think a lot of people, we weren't trained to do that naturally. Unfortunately, a lot of life skills we need in business, we weren't trained how to do. And I even see that in little kids. Kids can talk to kids, and then an adult comes in and they just kind of freeze like a deer in the headlight. And I've been a very big advocate of my kids being articulate with everyone, asking good questions, and it's sad in this day and age. They're like, wow, your boys are, I'm like, they just are, they can have a basic conversation, but it's not taught anymore how to do that, so.
Well, the misnomer is that you have to go and like push cards on people and talk and like sell and convince and like, talk through everything. And the reality is, what we're really trying to do is ask questions, listen, understand people, and qualify whether I should be investing. I've already spent 10 minutes with this person one-on-one. Should I spend another 10, or should I move on and meet somebody else? And without having a good system or process, you end up talking and pushing and selling and talking the whole time, and you don't really get to know who you should be meeting with or not, and who's qualified or not. And so it's a total turn it on its head situation. And I share in my book, by the way, that no one has wasted more time networking than me. Like, I've made all the mistakes, right? So good news is I learned from them, and I realized I didn't want to be a professional meter, right? And that there are certain people you just can't help or shouldn't help, and how to really kind of like maneuver through the maze of all that to get to where the results are. And it's been an absolute pleasure watching people with no networks at all, in particular some of the lawyers I work with, and now they've got these really top shelf networks of, a dozen strategic partners referring them and new clients coming in and referrals coming in. It's like a whole different world than they had, you ever thought they could have. So absolutely wonderful to see that transition.
Yeah. And I will tell you, Google, like, I'm a big advocate, and, as I should be, of Google producing leads for you, but there is no better lead. Google's the best you're going to get online. There is no better lead than a hot referral from your warm market. Never, never, never. So it will be 100% ROI positive if you learn how to network right. And I was like you, I was a professional people meter. I love talking to people, so it was fun. But there is an actual way to turn the conversation into a valuable asset for you in determining that. So pick up Steve's book and save yourself a decade of experience and just learn how to do it right. And then put yourself out there. Go show up to some events and put some of those learnings into action, and see how quickly your light bulb will come on and you're thinking, how have I not been doing this, the whole time? So Steve, tell me a little bit about your brand as Be That Lawyer. What does being that lawyer actually mean in practical terms?
That's a great question. I appreciate it. The practical term is, everyone knows a lawyer who they look up to, that they know brings in all the business, that has an incredible reputation, and that person seems to be in control of their destiny economy of vacations and family time, and they work when they want to work. They come and go as they please. No one bothers them because they're the one bringing in the business to the firm. And whether you're a solo or you're a big firm lawyer, everyone knows that lawyer. And that's what Be That Lawyer is all about. It's helping lawyers who never thought they could be rainmakers to be rainmakers and live the lawyer life they want to live and the career they want to have, not just the one that they've been handed. And it's an incredible journey, not easy to move up to $1 million to $3 million, whatever it is that some people want to go from 3 to 10, that's okay too. But it's easier, to your point, with a coach in your corner, someone that can help you plan, execute, give you systems and language and ways of approaching it. Even my clients that I worked with 5, 10, 15 years ago, I still meet with on a regular basis because they've got questions and sometimes they get a little sloppy on a particular step or two or things that I just need to refresh them. And so, being that lawyer is, the crown jewel of lawyers in the profession. And that's my take on it, at least.
Yeah, I love the book. So I've read this book 3 times now. Every January I reread it. It's 10x is easier than 2x. And it talks about how our natural default modes as humans are to be in the 80%, our comfort zone. And it's typically $10 an hour tasks that we should not be doing. We should be having someone else in the company do so that we can focus on the 20% that moves the needle. And so to your point, even with those old coaching students, it is very easy for us to slip back into, we get to a certain level and there's always a next level. It's like a video game. You get to level 1 and then there's 2 and then there's 3. So there's always a level up moment, but it's easy without someone having accountability and without someone to bounce things off of. It's easy to get stuck back in our 80%. And then it may be a wonderful life, but you were capable of more. You just weren't focused on the 20% because the 80% was more comfortable. So amazing book to read. And it just kind of solidifies the point of, to grow. People don't grow on accident. Amazon didn't become Amazon accidentally. There was a lot of steps that went into that. And there was a lot of becoming a new person to get to the next level, And I think coaches are great because not only do they help advise us of our blind spots, but there's accountability in there to say, hey, Steve, did you do a time audit this month? Because it seems like you're doing a lot of like email answering or you're back to the phones or whatever that comfort zone is. It pulled you back in. And those aren't the tasks that are going to move the needle where you said you wanted to go. I love it. So, okay, now let's talk about, I want to hear your take on this. What is your advice to the lawyers who feel like they're busy but broke? And I think that's an easy spot to fall into for any business owner.
Yeah, usually it's because they have been able to be self-reflective. There are things that they're engaging in that aren't profitable. To your point, $10 an hour tasks. They're doing their own bookkeeping, making their own copies. They don't have a virtual assistant. They don't have an assistant. They don't have an intake model. They don't have a good phone system. They're just trying to do everything. And that's a lawyer mentality of who's better than me to handle all this? Well, unfortunately, it's not your genius. You have to do what is in your genius. Your genius is practicing the law. And any good business owner, how many times do you go to the dentist and the dentist is the one that, scheduled you. They're the one who greets you. They're the one who, cleans your teeth. No, they come in, they swoop in for 30 seconds, open your mouth, okay, and they're gone, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to realize that the legal business has changed and the only way that a lawyer is going to, truly be profitable, happy, and have free time is through systems and delegation and automation. There's just no way around it. And the good news is that was much more challenging like 10 years ago than it is today. Today, there's software for everything. You need an intake software. You need an automation for your phone. You need a VA, someone at $10 an hour, not $60 an hour. Do you need a receptionist in a big office with all the wood trimming? No, you don't need any of that. You just need to build a solid brand for yourself. And I'm of the ilk of keep your overhead low and your profit high. And what that does is it allows solos, for example, to stockpile cash so that can be reinvested in the business in the form of additional automations, marketing, and new hires, right? When you have $100,000 in the bank on top of what you're paying yourself, you're going to feel that much more comfortable and inclined to hire a new associate than if you're check to check and doing everything. Then you're never going to get out of that cycle. That's the problem.
Yep. I had a fractional CFO. She was in legal for, I think, 7-10 years running a law firm. Now does fractional CFO and bookkeeping. And she said the first thing that she looks at is what is your overhead expense versus your marketing expense, which I was like, oh my God, I'm going to take that clip on my phone and just replay it. So everyone's like, you're biased. No, can't run a business if you don't have leads. You've got to have marketing budget. But the thing is, I find so many lawyers who want the fancy downtown office. And I'm like, how about let's get a suburb office because it doesn't matter if you're downtown, right? And spend all of that money to acquire new clients, So the game, COVID really changed a lot of things. I mean, you can have fractional anything, CMO, CFO, COO. You can have even a VA assistant doesn't even have to go into your office anymore. The intake EQ, you have virtual AIs that can answer the phone 10 times better than a human can. So there's just so many ways that you can minimize expenses to put those expenses back into where they're going to pay off for you. And I often reference the book, and for you, this is a huge plug, because when I read the book Fireproof, the big turning point for Mike Morris, right? And I talk about him a lot. There's a million different attorneys that did it well, that are behemoths, right, in their market. Just so happens he wrote a great blueprint. But I'll tell you, in summary, that book, I get to see 20 years of his experience in one weekend when I read it, because it was so easy to read. And the turning point was when he hired a coach. And his coach back in 2000s was the guy who ended up writing the book Traction and the EOS system. But what his coach said is, you're trying to wear all the hats. And the very first meeting, he said they walked in to his little firm. He was a multi-million-dollar firm, but still paycheck to paycheck, barely making it. And he said, I want you to tell your little team, I think there was 5 or 10 people, I want you to tell them all the things you're struggling with. And he was like, oh no, but he said after the first, he said, well, this is one thing I'm really struggling with. And he goes, man, that felt so good that I was like, and this, and this, and this. And he said, the coach didn't even say anything other than, Mike, let's share with your team some areas you're struggling. And when he did, his team loved him. And they're like, I can do that. Mike, I can do that. I can do that. He walked out of a room, 50% of his workload was gone. And he would never have done that if he didn't have somebody that gave him the courage to walk in and say, hey, we need to change some things aren't working. So huge advocate for a coach, because you can see he went from $1 million firm to a 1.5+ billion firm. And it was because the coach could see all the blind spots and put the puzzle pieces together with him so that he could scale and not be focusing on tasks that were wasting his time. Okay, so Steve, you have interviewed over 500 experts on your podcast, Be That Lawyer. What are the common traits that you see that most successful attorneys share?
So I'll give you a couple. Number one, we started off right off the bat, was mindset. The mindset needs to be, how are we helping others? How are we solving problems? How can we be a giver to people instead of a taker? That's a common theme throughout. Number two is, this is points we've made already, but you need to become a student of the business of law. There's the law, we get it. You know the law in and out. Congratulations, you're a great lawyer. What about the business side? What do you know about how to run it? What do you know about how to market it? What do you know? The stuff you never learned in law school, guess what? It's pretty important. So becoming a student of the game is very much a common theme in the interviews that I've conducted. And then it always comes back to systems. I mean, people that are just winging it, business development, marketing, planning, it's all being kind of thrown out there and hoping something sticks. Random acts of marketing, it's another one I hear on a regular basis. Having a system of how you market, having a system of how you network, how you do business development, how you operate a firm. These are all things that have been done. You don't have to recreate the wheel. But if you're not a student of the game and you're not putting systems in place and automations, then it's going to be very, very difficult to keep up, and you're going to find yourself behind the 8 ball quite a bit. So those are 3 common themes that would come up on the show in a part of the book, Be That Lawyer, 101 Top Rainmaker Secrets to Growing a Successful Law Practice. These are rainmakers sharing these similar themes that they're coming across of what kept them from being that lawyer and what ultimately helped them to be that lawyer.
Great information. So, all right, I'm going to leave all of Steve's contact information in the description below, along with his book links on Amazon and ways that you can get in contact with Steve. But I like to wrap up with, if your life was a movie scene, Steve, and every time you walked on set, what would your theme song be when you walk out?
Probably Can't Stop by Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm just a bit of a machine in how I run and how organized I am, and I'm driven to help lawyers succeed around the world, and there's not much that's going to stop me, and I got my mind on something pretty relentless. So I think that would be my theme when I walk on a set.
I love Red Hot Chili Peppers, so I'm going to have to go listen to it. I haven't heard it in a while. I'll have to listen to it, but I love that. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, Steve. Again, I'm going to leave all your contact information for everybody below, and I'd love for you guys to go check out even more helpful podcasts with guests that I have so that you can scale your law firm and your law practice smarter, not harder. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.